Welcome, everyone, to the next perfect step, where all possibilities lie in conversation. I'm your co-host, Lori Mullen.
And I'm Lori Tremblay, your co-host, and we are both holistic energy practitioners. And we're so excited to have this podcast as a forum for conversations. Today we have a good friend of mine and a wonderful leader, Gayle Nowak, and she guides spirit-led coaches and holistic practitioners to create authentic, healthy business relationships without hiding or silencing themselves as they can communicate boldly, lead lovingly, make the world a better place. Her coaching program and retreats are designed to lead you from hiding in plain sight to becoming a bold and gentle leader in the New Earth paradigm. I love that. Welcome, Gayle.
Thank you, Lori. And Lori, I'm excited to share this space with you today. Thank you for inviting me in.
Yes, we're so happy to have you. And I have admired your work. I mean, I worked with you a little bit years ago when we were doing the story stylist, but now your work has evolved so much more than into leadership, into helping other people step into be seen. I think that's such an important part, especially for spiritual um, business people that maybe they're not used to being speaking out. So how do you
Yeah.
accomplish that goal? What got you into that role?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. And we've known each other, I think we've known each other really since the beginning of my business in 2013. And you're right. I started out working with coaches and healers, specifically helping them with their signature story, helping them discover that and craft that and share that. And in that process, I have a marketing background. I started out in journalism. I was in marketing communications at an engineering firm. I was in a PR and advertising company before I decided to go out on my own. And so story has been part of my work, promoting stories, writing stories. That's been a part of my whole adult career. And I was coming at stories from a very strategic standpoint. Stories are very powerful for marketing and branding. And so when I started my business, I was coming from that standpoint. And what I was discovering, Lori, is I would get in the room with my client and something else started to happen. They started to be really open and vulnerable and talk about personal experiences that they had that were informing their business, informing decisions that they were making, or really the formation of their business. And it was a very powerful and often healing experience. I can't tell you how many times people would get in the room with me and say, I never told anybody that before. And it was unexpected at first, once the more it started happening, I was like, okay, here we go. And so what I was really learning at that time is that story work had a healing component to it. And there was something about me, I didn't really understand this at the time, but looking back on it now, it makes more sense. There was something about me that felt safe, where people could go in and they could go deep and they could share vulnerably and openly. And that really that caught my attention about how can our businesses, for me, a lot of healing came through my own business. How can business be a mirror for our own evolution? And that's not something that happened overnight. That's something that's been developing over the last more than a decade now. And really everything that has transformed and transpired through my business and through my personal life, it all kind of comes back to this authentic, healthy relationship theme, communication and emotional wellness. And so it started out, really specific with story, and it's grown ever since into still that umbrella of communication. I still care very much about strategy. And there's now this deeper element of, okay, how can you feel emotionally safe being seen? A lot of my clients have experienced adversity, have experienced childhood trauma. Um, Sometimes there are blocks because we've had previous lives where we were persecuted for speaking out, right? So sometimes things like that come up. I I think that there are probably, I mean, I don't know, I don't have any proof of this, but my sense of it is there's a lot of people that I've worked with and just in my professional circle that have probably been persecuted as witches, in past lives. So you hit the nail on the head, Lori, when you said like sometimes it's very scary and literally feels dangerous to be seen for whatever reason, whether that's social programming or childhood trauma or past life, um, residual energy. And so that really, as I started stepping into my own healing and understanding myself deeper and really kind of peeling back the layers and the coping mechanisms that I had and really kind of discovering, oh, okay, who am I really? Um, and being more open about expressing that, the more I just felt drawn to, okay, it's not an either or thing. We can have strategy. We can bring in this energetic piece. We can bring in healing. We can bring in the spiritual pieces. Um, and that's when the magic and the miracles happen. And it's like, it's both. You need both. You need the structure. You need the flow. You need the I love to connect in with source energy every day. And in 2019, my business was at that point had really kind of reached a high point, but there was a misalignment there because I felt like, oh gosh, I'm really not enjoying this anymore. And I had to step away. And from, 2019 really up until recently, this evolution has been taking place about something's missing. What is it? Getting curious, being, taking that leap of faith, listening to the nudges from spirit. Like this is, you're sort of on the path, but you need a 15-degree shift, and really learning to surrender and trust the process, which is not always an easy thing to do as a business owner, because sometimes that looks like releasing all your clients. Sometimes that looks like not making money. Sometimes that looks like, um, just sort of feeling like the pieces are here and they're floating around and I don't really understand how they all fit together. Right. So, and a lot of that comes up in with the clients that I'm working with too.
I can totally understand that. Lori and I have had our own businesses for a long time, and we go through exactly the same process. Wouldn't you say so, Lori? Too
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
questionings and yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's so important what you said was that we are on a path and we kind of veer off. And I don't know if it's veering off, but it's opening up to maybe a path we've never seen or never could even think of
Mm,
for ourselves,
yeah.
that we should be on. Instead, we're trying to form our own path, right? We're putting our own stones there when really there's a path already for us, right? And I did the same thing. Like I opened a business and recently I just closed it. And I had to surrender. There were all kinds of things in there, but I really did have to surrender how I truly felt and what I learned from that. I mean, I learned huge amounts from opening and closing my business, and it was the best thing. And
Yeah.
that's really weird for some people to hear.
Mhm.
But it really was the right thing. It was the right thing
Yeah.
for me. So I was wondering if you could maybe talk a little bit about surrender. I think the word surrender, we think of, it almost feels like to us, the word surrender is to give your power away or to have somebody else, surrendering to somebody else's will, when really that's not what we're talking about.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for sharing your experience with that and for the question. And for me, surrender is really releasing the perception of control, because it is a perception. True, there are certain things that we can control. Usually that's controlling, I don't even like to use that word. It's being aware of our own emotions and how we're responding to things, right? In my opinion, that's basically all we can control is how we're being, right? Our own energy, our own emotions. So surrender for me is really releasing that perception of control and allowing life source to move through you. Now, I am like the least likely person to have gone there and to start to lean into surrender. I grew up in a pretty dysfunctional family. There was abuse, there was neglect. And so control and trying to control my environment, trying to control people, even if it didn't look controlling, trying to control outcomes was very much ingrained in me. So this has been a big, learning to surrender has been a big journey and shift for me. And I love the example that you shared, Lori, about opening and closing your business and really surrendering to that. I had a similar experience last year where I got to the point where there was a lot of stagnancy, and then there were a lot of personal things going on. My kids were having a mental health crisis. Um, my mom was in the process of making her transition, and I'm part of the sandwich generation, so I'm trying to hold all the pieces of my family together while running a business, and the business wasn't feeling fun for me. I was feeling burnt out, and I made the decision early in 2023, like I something's got to give. I'm working far too hard for this business that's not really fulfilling me right now. I'm going to take a break from that. I'm going to focus on my family. And in the summer of last year, um, I kind of got to that surrender point where I was just like, this is all beyond my pay grade. Like, show me where you want me to go. Show me what you want me to do. Um, Things had gotten better with my kids. My mom passed away last August. And so I was really at this point of like, I can't figure it out, and I don't want to anymore. I don't want to try to figure it out. I don't want to try to make it work. Just show me the way. And a really interesting thing happened. Um, Two things happened. I got a massive download for like the 10-year vision for my business, which shocked me because I don't plan that. Like, I don't even do, I plan quarterly. Like, that's what I've been doing. But I got this download and it was big and it kind of freaked me out, but I was like, okay, like this is the big vision. And my next question was, what's the next step? The next perfect step, right? And about a week later, I saw this advertisement for an education coach for students at the local university near me. And it's working with neurodiverse college students who have disabilities, who are on the autism spectrum, and it's helping them. It's helping them with their studies and their time management and their organization. It's also helping them with emotional wellness. And I knew the second I saw that advertisement, it was for a contract position. I was like, if I apply to this, I'm going to get this job. I'm going to get this job. And I didn't pursue it at first because I actually knew I was going to get this job. And I was like, I don't see how this fits. So, when you're surrendering, you can have these moments, right? And it's okay to take a pause and sort of feeling to that, like, well, what is this really about? Like, what do I need? What do I need to move forward? And so I sat with it for a couple of days, and then I was like, you know what? It's not, sometimes for me, commitment, it's like, if I make a decision, I think it's forever, you know? And so I kind of got to that place of like, well, I'll never know if I don't try. I'll never know if I like this. I'll never know if this is a good fit if I don't try. So I applied for the position. 20 minutes after I submitted my application, got a request to do an interview. Interview was the following week. 20 minutes after the interview, they offered me the job, the position.
That's good.
So what's interesting about this too, Lori, Lori Tremblay, you might remember a few years ago, me coming to visit you and talking about working with children.
Yes, I do. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And Lori Mullen on the topic of surrender. 4 years previously, or 3 years previously, I had received the message that I was going to be working with children. And at that time, I couldn't see it. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I was open to it, and I tried to make it happen, the way I thought it was meant to be. And it went well, but it didn't feel, I was like, yeah, it came together easily and it was fun, but it doesn't quite feel right. And I let it go. And I kind of went through my own transformative process. And then here we are, like, okay, I'm letting go, I'm surrendering, and this opportunity pops up. And I'm working with adults still in my practice, but now this new generation is starting to come in to my practice. And there's no way, if you had asked me 4 years ago or 2 or 3 years ago, Lori, when I was sitting in your kitchen, that's what it was going to look like, I never would have gone there. I don't have special education training. I don't, it's like would not have even entered my mind. And that's the power of surrendering, is our mind can be massively expansive and imaginative, and it can also be so limiting. And so when you start to work more with spirit, wow, it's just like what you thought it was going to be is so much more than what it actually ends up being.
That's so
Right. We see that. Go ahead.
That's so true. I mean, and that's the part of surrender. I love that you used surrender and allow. I think they have to go together. You don't do one without the other. That's
Right.
the part of surrendering, is what you said. You're surrendering. What you're surrendering is you trying to control everything.
Right.
It's you trying to force the next step. It's you trying to think you know what the next steps are. And that's how you're limiting, and you're trying to control it. That's you trying to form your own path instead of following the path.
Right.
So I think that's so important, because that opens up those next steps that you couldn't even imagine. Like you said, you couldn't have even told somebody that this is how it was going to turn out, because you couldn't have. But if you kept trying to control it, you'd be off on another lane somewhere, you know?
Right.
And I think that that's how it was with my business too. I thought that this was the next correct step, right? This was, I had learned all this stuff. I had taken all these classes. I did all these things. Well, what do I do with it? And I was told this is the next step. You have to, do this. And it just wasn't fulfilling the way I thought it was supposed to be fulfilling. And
Huh.
it was a step to get me to the next ones. But if I hadn't surrendered to let it go, then I would still be forcing my way on a certain way. I needed that step. That was a step on the path, but I needed to surrender it to allow this whole, I knew there was something more. I knew that this was supposed to turn into something bigger. And if I hadn't surrendered to that, I wouldn't be here, and I
Right.
think that's just beautiful. And I just love that you use those two words together, surrender and allow. I think it's super important because I think it goes together. And you're not surrendering yourself, you're surrendering trying to control it all yourself. Yeah. So I think that's super
Exactly.
important. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think another point that you made too is that both of you is that you weren't feeling fulfilled. I mean, that's important to just like to go with your gut, so to speak. I've been there too. I've done a lot of things that didn't work out, or I felt flat, and I'm like, okay, this is not the right thing to do. So you just get up, and you just you like you said, Gail, connect to source, do your best to find the feeling of the intuition for your next step. But I think that's so important is to pay attention to that. Like if you're not feeling fulfilled, if you're feeling like something's off, just stop and say, okay, what's going on? What is it that I'm not feeling comfortable with?
I think that's really important is asking those questions instead of you trying to figure it out. Right? Our job is to look for the direction we're being pulled in, not trying to figure out what it is, not trying to figure out the how or what is my next step, but asking the question, what is my next step? And being open and allowing to hear what that answer is.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um, and I love that you're bringing up ask the question, because when you start to get into that practice, it's like anything else, right? Like ultimately it can become automatic. Like hopefully you're still being conscious about it and intentional about it. And you're absolutely right. I feel like everything is information, right? We make meaning of the information that is coming to us. And I think that it can be very easy sometimes to say, well, that didn't work out. I guess that wasn't for me. Well, it depends, like it depends on how you're looking at it. I personally believe everything is happening for us, even the crap stuff, because it's information, right? Nothing, I also personally believe nothing is ever wasted. So those pursuits, those interests that, you've each talked about that, maybe it wasn't quite the right fit, there's still something you gain from that you bring with you. So nothing is ever wasted. And coming from that point of view and just getting curious of like, okay, I recognize I was interested in this. It didn't quite work out the way I thought it was going to work out. I didn't quite feel fulfilled. What wants to come through me now? Where does spirit want me to go now? Where do you want me to go? How do you want me to serve? Questions like that open up the response. And we always get answers. We don't necessarily always like the answers, but we always, the answers are there. The answers are from within. It's really a matter of practicing, like how does spirit, communicate with you, right? And sometimes we have blocks, like sometimes it's loud and we're not hearing it or we're not receiving it because we're protecting ourselves, we're shut down, we're, whatever it happens to be. And so in those times where you're feeling unfulfilled, it is a great time to take a beat, take a pause, and reflect on, okay, this isn't feeling good for me. What might feel better? Right? What do I need to know to take that next step? What might that next step be? And to really start working on these spiritual practices, whether that's meditating, it's different for every person. For me, I started walking. Like I got this hit of like you need to move your body. Now I've been on a lifelong journey of like working out. I love sports. I'm a very active person. So I got the message you need to walk, and I was like, "Pfft, whatever." It's just like immediately I got the message, but immediately I started judging it. I was like, walking, like, what's that gonna do? Oh my God, amazing what that did for me. You know, it cleared my help. It was an energy clearing process for me that I didn't, again, surrendering, right? Like, okay, I'm gonna have my reaction to this, but ultimately I'm gonna surrender to what I'm receiving and I'm gonna give it a try. And what I now know is that this is an essential walking, moving my body, qigong, whatever, whatever movement practice I'm using, that's essential for my energetic and emotional well-being. It makes me a better mom. It makes me a better wife. It makes me a better Gayle. It makes me a better coach. It makes me a better leader. It makes me a better client. It's these processes and these practices will get clearer the more you begin to co-create with spirit.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned walking because Lori got the hit to walk, and so did I. And I went on a walk yesterday, and it was magical. I
Yeah.
found a hawk feather, and hawks are special to me.
Yeah.
And then I was like, all these, it was just so my clearing of my mind. And it felt because when I don't move, energy gets stuck and I get frustrated because you need to move your energy, as you said. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
I think that it's been really important with everything going on and all the energies we're facing right now. I think it is walking outdoors is a huge clearing, and it disconnects us from everything else, right? We don't bring our TVs with us. Um, we may walk with a couple people, but usually, or just by yourself, it clears away all of it, right? You are
Yeah.
just with you. And I think, it's helped me a tremendous amount lately to move that energy and to get it out. And like Laurie said, it makes you feel better. Right.
Yeah.
So you talked about being seen and heard. And I think this is coming up. I've seen a lot of this lately. I've seen a really lot of, videos and talks about throat chakras lately. And I liked something you said, like, so asking certain questions and relationships. So with ourselves and with spirit, but with other people too. I mean, we've always talked about, you know, clearing all the chakras and especially the throat chakra from women and where it came from. And it's always been hugely important and is important. However, I think that it's also changing. I think that we're needing to heal that throat and even in a different way. How we talk to other people, how we talk to ourselves, how we talk to spirit is like nothing we've ever done before. It's new. And I just, where you teach it and stuff, I just wanted you to maybe talk a little bit to help people begin that process or to even figure out where or how they need help in being seen and heard and why I think we're seeing so much healing around the throat recently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say it's for me and my experience and what I've seen with clients, the throat is actually the end. I wouldn't say the end. It's not the first place to go. it may be the thing that's most obviously blocked. And the root chakra, and I would say the solar plexus chakra are really important to look at and identify whether they're blocked. Because if we're not feeling safe and we're not feeling in our power, we can work on that throat chakra and we can have we can balance it and open it up to a point. And if we're not feeling safe to be seen and we're not feeling safe to really speak what's true for us, interesting that my throat
Yeah.
is doing this. Mm. Thank you. We're still going to be limited in the throat chakra. So, the chakras, there is a lot of talk about specific chakras, and specific chakras represent, different aspects of us, and it's a holistic system. And so we have to look at the whole system. There's a little, I'm going to share a tool. I hope I get it right. There's a tool out there called Eclectic Energies, eclecticenergies.com. And it will help you assess what's going on with your chakras. And I use this tool with clients, and I've used it with myself. And most of the time, it starts with an underactive root chakra. A lot of times my clients, their throat's open or balanced. It's the lower chakras that are underactive. And even the heart chakra, which is just beneath, right? Those two chakras work together as well, because if our heart is armored up, we're going to be very judicious about the words coming out of our mouth, because we're in a place of, I'm afraid to speak what's in my heart because I'm afraid of what's going to happen as a result of that, right? And this goes back to our inner power down into our solar plexus, right? And for me, power is not the power over. Power is feeling free to be yourself and speak your truth and receive whatever comes. And I think that last piece, this was a definition that I got from my coach, Darla Ledoux, and it's been a game changer for me. That last piece of receiving whatever comes, being okay with whatever comes. That's where the work is, right? So what do we need to do energetically? What do we need to do emotionally? What do we need to do physically to know and to be able to stand in, no matter what happens, I am going to be okay. And that, I can appreciate, sometimes I get pushback on that. Like, well, sometimes things are dangerous. Sometimes, yes, absolutely. There are times where there are things that are dangerous and you can get hurt or worse. And 95% of the time, it's not that. It's really not that, but our body is responding as if it's that. It doesn't matter if it's physical safety, emotional safety. If you're not feeling safe, your body is going to respond to that. And so it's as equally, if not more important, to work with your energy as it is with your nervous system regulation, right? They work together. Your chakras work together. So I think we're seeing like this healing around the throat chakra because this is a time in our history where our words, I think, can be, if we're allowing, our words actually can transmit light. And so I think that's why this is coming up in the awareness, why we're getting more intentional about the way we engage with people, listening more, being more respectful, being more curious instead of judgmental. And yeah, it's a big shift in the way that we communicate and engage with people. It's a big shift towards really being loving and healing with our words.
Yeah, I
Beautiful.
love that. What you said, that light comes through our words. That is beautiful. And that is exactly what I was talking about, is I think that we are discovering a new way to communicate. I think we're changing the way we communicate and letting the love and the light come through. We're letting it come through our bodies, and now to come out of our words and our voice, and to share that light that way. And I think that's a beautiful thing. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's
it is beautiful. Yeah. Yeah.
My mantra or my prayer is always, let me be an instrument of your love.
Mm,
Just, you know, you never know who you're going to meet or who needs to hear what you have to say or feel your energy, even if you don't say anything. You can allow that to
yeah.
that flow.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it's simply being silent
Right.
and also being that safe, firm place of love without any words. Maybe it's really, so it's interesting because I see a lot of I see communication differently now, having done this work, right? And the patterns, and this happens to all of us. This happens to me too. Like, you get excited and you want to interject and you want to put your point in there. And um, I think that the majority of people want to be right. And they want to show, like, I'm right about this, right? And we kind of get hung up on that. And it's a real exercise in self-mastery to have those thoughts and those feelings come up, and to just allow them to be with you without opening your mouth. And to discern when's the time that I need to speak up, and when's the time that I need to be quiet so that somebody else can share. And I think that that's a very different way of leading. We're not seeing that. I don't want to get too political, but we're not seeing that in our very public leaders right now.
Right.
And thank goodness, right, that this healing of the throat chakra is coming through. It's a collective change. It's going to take time. It's an evolution. And I think that we're, I wouldn't say we're at a tipping point, but I think that we're approaching that tipping point where we're growing up in the way that we communicate.
I agree. I wanted to thank you too for your work that you have with helping people to be seen and heard. And that's something that we can also offer people, not only listening to them, but allowing them to be seen, as seeing them, hearing them, and giving them the space to feel that they're being seen.
Yeah.
That's important. So it's like a two-way street almost.
Yeah, it is. It's beautiful what you and Lori are creating here, and giving people a platform, giving it, offering that opportunity for visibility and having these conversations. I so appreciate the longer format, right? Because we can go deeper, and we can go deeper, we can go wider. It can be a very expansive place. And I do think that in particular for spiritual entrepreneurs and healers, sometimes the work that they do, it's hard to talk about. And so having that longer format, or that longer platform where it's a conversation, where they can tell stories, where they can share experiences, uh, helps other people get a better sense of the work that they're doing in the world. So I think it's beautiful what you're doing with this podcast.
Yeah. That's what we wanted to do. It was our goal. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we
So,
wanted to make these conversations just every day, right? Just to feel
mhm.
free in the safe space to just expand these conversations, right? Really what our goal was. Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
great. So how can people, if people are looking to be seen and heard, how, what upcoming classes or how can they get in touch with you? Um,
Yeah, so you can reach me at gaylnowak.com. That's my website. I'm also on LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn these days. I do have a presence on Instagram and Facebook. All those links are to the different social media platforms are available on my website. For anyone who's really wanting to make a shift with their communication, I have a business communication assessment form that's on my website. And with that assessment form, it'll help you, discover your communication strengths, give you greater awareness and feedback around what might be impacting your business relationships. It's probably going to hint at some other relationships as well, but I play in the sandbox of business. And it's going to help you identify specifically where you may have some opportunities for growth around creating authentic connections. So that's available on my website as well, that business communication assessment. And with that comes a complimentary call with me to receive feedback and possible next steps, right? Whatever that looks like. It might look like working with me. It might look like tools or resources or referrals to other people. But it's really, we can't move forward and make change until we're aware of the things that I would say the things that we're doing well and the things that are challenging us. And so that assessment is really the first place to start.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Gail, so much. Really appreciate your insights and just seeing you again. It's just great to talk with you.
Yeah, thank you for having
Mm.
me. I love this conversation, and I'm wishing you both just absolute blessings and success with everything that you're doing.
Great.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very, very much. And
You're
until
welcome.
next time, how is your intuition leading you to the next perfect step?